Diary of a Soldier. The Secret Training of American Soldiers. After World War II. October 18th, 1948. Eglin Field is nothing like the bases I've trained on before. The minute we arrived, they stripped away our unit insignias. No names, no ranks, just faces in a sea of fatigues. The brass kept it cryptic, saying we were here for something bigger than ourselves, something that could define the next war. That phrase hung heavy in the air. No one dared ask questions. The first thing that struck me about this place was the sheer scale. Bombers lined the runways like sleeping giants, rows of trucks and jeeps glinting under the Florida sun, and the constant roar of aircraft overhead. We were issued new gear, freshly stamped with serial numbers I didn't recognize. They handed us M1 Garands and Thompson submachine guns, but also some experimental rifles. I held one in my hands, lighter but with a strange mechanism. One of the officers muttered, "This is what you'll use in the next war." The briefing was vague. Operation Combine 3, they called it. The name sounded like it belonged in a science experiment, not a military exercise. But they didn't have to say much. We all knew what they meant. The Soviets. The war may have ended 3 years ago, but here, it felt like we were already preparing for the next one. October 19th, 1948. They woke us before dawn with whistles and barking orders. By the time I got my boots laced, the air was already thick with humidity. We were shuffled into trucks and driven to a staging area where dozens of men like me stood, faces grim and silent, waiting for whatever came next. The day's focus was coordination between infantry and armor. Watching Sherman tanks roll in formation was something to behold. Their engines roared like beasts, and the ground trembled under their treads. But these weren't the same Shermans we used in Europe. They were modified, faster, with thicker armor and new cannons that could punch through anything the enemy might throw at us. They told us we'd be running a simulated assault on a hostile position, with the tanks as our spearhead. When the exercise began, the tanks advanced, firing blanks so loud they felt real. We followed close behind, rifles at the ready, trying to keep pace without getting caught in their dust clouds. The enemy positions were fake, just mounds of dirt and wooden dummies, but the officers treated every movement like it was life or death. "Stay in formation! Cover your flanks!" they shouted. It felt chaotic, but I could see the logic. The tanks drew fire, we advanced under cover, and the enemy was suppressed before we even got close. It worked like a machine, if the machine didn't break down. But I couldn't help but think, in a real fight, with real bullets, how many of us would make it out alive? October 20th, 1948. Today was about the Air Force. The sky above Eglin Field is never quiet. B-29 bombers roared overhead, their bellies loaded with practice ordnance. They ran bombing runs on mock targets, and we were tasked with advancing through the aftermath. The sound of those bombs dropping, whistling through the air before hitting the ground, was enough to make my stomach knot. Even knowing they were dummies, the sheer force of the blasts rattled my bones. Our task was to coordinate with the air crews. Spotters used radios to call in targets, marking them with smoke flares. The bombers would swoop in, precision bombing the marked areas. It wasn't perfect. A few strikes landed dangerously close to our advancing lines. "Friendly fire," they called it, like it wasn't terrifying. The most striking thing was the equipment. The bombers were outfitted with new Norden bomb sights, so advanced they claimed they could drop a bomb in a barrel from 20,000 feet. Watching them work, I almost believed it. Almost. October 21st, 1948. Paratroopers. I'd seen them in action during the war, but seeing them train here was something else entirely. The planes came in low, C-47s roaring overhead, and then suddenly, the sky was full of parachutes. Dozens, maybe hundreds, descending in perfect formation. We were playing the role of defenders, tasked with repelling their landing. It didn't go well for us. The paratroopers hit the ground running, their M1 carbines barking as they advanced. We tried to hold our positions, but they were too fast, too coordinated. By the time I realized we were being flanked, it was over. "You're dead," an officer said, tapping my shoulder. I wasn't alone. In the debrief, they emphasized the importance of speed and precision. "If you can't think 3 steps ahead, you're already a step behind," one of the instructors growled. They were right. The paratroopers moved like a machine, each man knowing exactly what to do without hesitation. Reflection. This place isn't just about training. It's about redefining how wars are fought. Everything here feels experimental, from the gear to the tactics, to the very structure of the exercises. They're testing us as much as they're testing their ideas. What works, what doesn't, what gets you killed and what keeps you alive. Eglin Field isn't just preparing us for war. It's preparing us for a war that hasn't even been imagined yet. The officers talk about the Soviets like they're already marching toward us. Maybe they are. Maybe this whole operation is a message, not just to us, but to them. A message that says, we're ready. Or at least, we will be.